Okay, so what would it actually take for a 34-year-old Democratic socialist to become the mayor of New York City? Today, we're jumping into a really fascinating hypothetical, the absolutely improbable victory of Zohran Mamdani.
I mean, it's the kind of question that would just stun the entire political world. How could a relative newcomer like Zohran Mamdani possibly take on a political giant for the top job at City Hall? Let's dive in, because the answer reveals what could be a massive shift in urban politics. First off, let's just take a second to appreciate the scale of a hypothetical win like this. It wouldn't just be a political upset. No way. It would be a whole series of historic firsts, shattering long-standing barriers in one of the most powerful cities on the planet. To really understand how a victory like this could even happen, you've got to look at the person behind it all. His journey, from an activist to an assemblyman, well, that's what laid the groundwork for this entire story.
You know, Zohran Mamdani's path is not your typical one for a New York politician. He was born in Uganda to a world-renowned academic and a celebrated filmmaker, so his story is international from the get-go. But it's also a classic New York immigrant story, one that ends with him becoming a U.S. citizen just a few short years before jumping into the political ring.
And this is absolutely crucial. His political ideas weren't cooked up in some think tank. They were forged on the front lines, as a housing counselor helping everyday New Yorkers fight eviction. Seeing that affordability crisis up close, day in and day out, became the bedrock of his entire political career.
And he quickly proved he wasn't just an activist, he was really effective. I mean, beating a 5-term incumbent to win his first assembly seat, that was just the beginning. Once in office, he actually delivered. He helped create a fare-free bus pilot program, and, most dramatically, he staged a 15-day hunger strike that actually won debt relief for taxi drivers. He was building a reputation as someone who fought and won for working people.
So, this foundation he built became the launch pad for his mayoral run. He put together a campaign that was just laser-focused on one single, powerful theme: making New York City affordable again. Just look at how bold and direct these promises are. This is not a platform of vague ideas. It's a list of concrete solutions aimed squarely at the biggest expenses for New Yorkers: transit, rent, childcare, food. It's the kind of message that would just resonate so deeply with voters who are feeling squeezed by the city's crazy cost of living.
And a modern platform like that needed a modern campaign strategy. Mamdani's team didn't just play by the old rules, they bypassed traditional media and went straight to where the younger voters are: Instagram and TikTok. They made viral, engaging content that made politics feel accessible and urgent to a whole new generation.
And this is just a perfect example of his creative approach. He didn't just talk about freezing rents, he actually took a polar plunge into icy water to symbolize it. It was this memorable, totally shareable stunt that got his core message across in a way a boring press release never, ever could. So he had the background, he had the platform, and he had the strategy. But to win, he had to take down a political titan. Let's see how this incredible underdog story could play out.
The hypothetical Democratic primary would be the ultimate David versus Goliath showdown. I mean, you couldn't write it better. In one corner, you've got Mamdani, the young, progressive activist with all this grassroots energy. And in the other corner, Andrew Cuomo, the former governor, a political veteran with deep establishment ties and massive name recognition.
The result? Well, it would have been a political earthquake. Mamdani wouldn't just squeak by. He'd win decisively with 56% of the vote. A victory like this would send a shockwave through the establishment, proving that his message of affordability and that grassroots energy was way more powerful than anyone thought. But hold on, the fight wouldn't be over. A defeated Cuomo could totally launch an independent bid, creating this complicated three-way race with the Republican Curtis Lewa. The stage would be set for a really dramatic final battle.
A high-stakes race like this would galvanize the whole city. A turnout of over 2 million people would be one of the highest in decades. This wouldn't be a victory decided by a small minority. It would show that New Yorkers were paying close attention and showing up in huge numbers.
And then, on November 4th, the improbable would happen. With 50.4% of the vote, Zohran Mamdani would secure a narrow but clear majority. He would have successfully translated his movement into a citywide mandate to become the next mayor of New York.
The victory would be historic, no doubt about it. But winning is one thing. Governing is something else entirely. So what would this all mean for New York's future, and what massive challenges would lie ahead?
It's really two sides of the same coin. On one hand, a win like this is a massive victory for the progressive movement, representing a new generation of leadership that's truly connected to the cost of living crisis. But the challenges? They would be immense. How could he possibly deliver on these very expensive promises? How would he handle opposition from powerful business interests? And could he manage the huge expectations that come with such a historic win?
And that brings us to the ultimate question, doesn't it? Zohran Mamdani's hypothetical victory would be a triumph of vision and movement building. But as he steps into City Hall, that's when the real test would begin. Could his ambitious, progressive vision survive the harsh, complex, and often unforgiving political reality of New York City? Well, that remains to be seen.